You've just entered the no delusion zone. I'm David DeBatto. Well, today is another in the series of short monologues that I'm doing on this channel regarding what's going on here in the oligarchy, which used to be the constitutional republic of the United States. As I said, it is now an oligarchy run by out of control billionaires. Every day here since the inauguration of Donald Trump on January 20th has been a nightmare, a roller coaster, plunging us deeper and deeper into a pit that we may never dig ourselves out of. Uh, but today is an especially dark day because of the actions that happened yesterday. Yesterday, on February 12th, Trump had a 1.5 hour phone call with Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation. And after the phone call, Trump made some brief statements where he congratulated Putin, called him his friend, said he's a very smart fellow again, that he uses common sense. And he told the assemblage of reporters that he likes Putin because he took that phrase common sense from him. He used that in a tweet or whatever he does on his truth social something or other, whatever Trump has. So he congratulated his new best forever friend, called him smart, and gave some brief statements about the conversation. Essentially, he said that they've agreed, they, meaning Putin and Trump, not Zelensky, the actual president of Ukraine, they've agreed that Ukraine should never join NATO, and that, without getting into too much details, Putin is going to get pretty much whatever he wanted. There was no talk of concessions that Trump stated by Russia. Russia wasn't going to have to give up anything, essentially, but Ukraine was going to have to give up any aspirations for ever joining NATO, which would essentially leave it defenseless. Because NATO wasn't there in 2014, and it certainly wasn't there in 2022, except for some advisors. And we saw what happened there 3 years later. Shortly after the disgraceful press conference in the White House, on which also Trump added, when asked by a reporter, does he feel that President Zelensky is an equal partner in any negotiations on any peace plan for his, Zelensky's country, Trump seemed to be stumped. He literally paused for a few moments and couldn't answer the question. And then he eventually never answered the question. And he said, there needs to be peace. The killing, the death has to stop. So he would not acknowledge, even when pressed, that the president of the country that's been invaded, occupied, and almost destroyed will have basically no part in any negotiations about his country. Shortly after that, the newly appointed and newly approved Secretary of Defense of the oligarchy of the United States, Pete Hegseth, said while attending the security conference in Munich, Germany, that, he reiterated what Trump said, basically that Ukraine has to abandon any hopes of ever joining NATO, and that as far as the territorial integrity of Ukraine, that the pre-2014 borders that Ukraine had, which really it had since its independence in 1991, were, quote, unrealistic, and that the American parameters for redrawing the map of Ukraine were not totally at variance with Ukraine preferences. Really, Mr. Secretary? So you're saying that since Trump believes that Ukraine should just surrender 20% of its country that was illegally seized, brutally seized by a hostile foreign power and occupied for the last 11 years, should just remain with the occupier? Very good. And you believe that the Ukrainians are going to be okay with that. It's not really at variance with what the Ukrainians want. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Secretary, what the Ukrainians want is their whole country back, you asshole. They want all of it. They want the Donbass. They want Crimea. They want every square meter of their country back. And they want all Russian forces out. And they would have had all Russian forces out if President Biden, in his infinite cowardice and stupidity, had supplied Ukraine with all the weapons, ammunition, and training that they begged for over the last 3 years. We wouldn't be having this discussion. I wouldn't be making this podcast because the Russian military would have crawled back to Russia with its tail between its legs. They would have had their ass kicked by the Ukrainians. But that didn't happen, did it? No, because Biden was a coward, is a coward. And Trump is a transactional bully and a coward. So here's what we have right now, folks, and most people aren't getting this yet. They will. It's not just that America has now betrayed an ally, stabbed them in the back, and cannot be trusted by anyone in the world, including our allies, our ex-allies. That's not the only thing, although that's bad enough. No. Trump, what he's done is reestablished an old world order. I don't mean prior to 2014. No, I'm talking prior to 1914. The old world, when the great powers carved up the world between themselves. It was called the Great Game. Well, we're back to the Great Game. And the new world order is now Trump's America, Putin's Russia, and Xi's China. Between the three of them, they are going to carve up the world. And no one is going to be able to stop them because do you think that if Putin rolls back into the rest of Ukraine in a few years, and he will, and on into Moldova, Georgia, the Baltics, Poland, and anything else he wants, that Trump is going to stop him? Will NATO have the stomach or the ability to stop him? Probably not. And if Xi wants to roll into Taiwan or seize the islands that are in dispute off the Philippines or anything else he wants in Asia, that Trump and America are going to stop him? I don't think so. How about the other idiot out there, the president of North Korea? If he rolls into South Korea and actually threatens to nuke it or does nuke it, you think America's going to step in there too? No, because now it's every man for himself. It's every dictator for him or herself. And that's been authorized and sanctioned by President Donald Trump as of yesterday. Think about it, because that's where we are at. I now also drew up a very brief, and it's a long list, but just very briefly today, I have what I call a full of shit list. And although President Trump, Donald Trump, is always going to be at the top of that list, I have some new people here today. The top one is Richard Haass. Why? Richard Haass, who's the former president of the Council of Foreign Relations, when confronted or asked about this new disgraceful action by Trump and Hegseth, said that, well, Putin is no longer a pariah based on the fact that Trump made this phone call with him and actually invited him to America to meet him at the White House, even though he's an indicted war criminal and should be arrested on sight when he enters a foreign country. Having said that, Haass said, well, this means that Putin's no longer a pariah. And the good news of that is that we can now expand negotiations about a number of things: the nuclear arms treaty, obviously Ukraine, NATO, aid to, blah, 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 Africa. What an asshole. Would you have done the same to Hitler? You would have invited old Adolf to the White House for tea with FDR, kind of yucked it up and seen what they could talk about, see if they had anything in common, maybe German Shepherds or the Bavarian Alps. Chuck Schumer, the minority leader of the Democrats in the Senate, a buffoon. He did nothing Nothing to stop the confirmation of the criminals who are now part of the cabinet of the oligarchy of the United States, the clowns. He did nothing to stop such the likes of Tulsi Gabbard as director of national intelligence, this Russian apparatchik cult leader, this wingnut, now director of national intelligence. We will have no more classified information, no more secrets. It's going to be a direct pipeline to the Kremlin. And of course, I already mentioned Pete Hegseth, the drunken white supremacist girlfriend, woman beater, hater of all women. Kash Patel, the other Trump apparatchik and bootlicker, who's now going to be the director of the FBI, along with his co-conspirator, Pam Bondi, who's now the U.S. Attorney General. The two of them have said that they're going to use Trump's enemies list, an enemies list right out of Stalin's playbook. And they're going to pursue it. They're going to find, investigate, indict, and imprison any and all enemies of Donald Trump. But we're not an authoritarian government. We're still a democracy. No. A constitutional republic, according to MAGA. And lastly, for today, General Kellogg. I used to like General Kellogg. I don't know him personally, but everything I read about him, he was a straight shooter, a very honorable man who served for many, many years in the United States military. But he became an apparatchik, and he became the envoy to the peace negotiations here with between Ukraine and Russia. He started mouthing the Trump mantra. He also said that Ukraine has no place or no future in NATO, that trying to hang on to their pre-2014 borders was unrealistic, and on and on. Shame on you, General Kellogg. Shame on you. I realize Trump's your boss, but if he forced you to say and do that at any negotiations, you should have done the honorable thing that you've done all the rest of your life before this. Resign. Resign with honor, with your head held high, instead of being another bootlicking ass kisser. Lastly, the honorable men and women list. And again, this is very brief. There's a lot of them, but I have to say the top of the list for me, retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, whom I've had on this program, the No Delusion Zone, several times, and I'll have him back in the near future. The former commander of the U.S. Army Europe. He has been a staunch supporter of Ukraine from the very beginning, and also a strong critic of the Biden administration, like me, and their failure to provide Ukraine with the weapons, ammunition, training that they needed to defeat Russia. As recently as yesterday, before this travesty of a phone call to Putin, he believed, as I did, that Ukraine could still win. In fact, that was the title of the podcast that I did with him. Ukraine can still win if provided with the proper weapons, the proper tools to defeat Russia. General Breedlove, four-star U.S. Air Force general, retired, and also the former commander of SHAPE in Brussels, feels the same way. Very pragmatic, straight shooter, honest, a real patriot. He also is a staunch supporter of Ukraine and is very, very disappointed in what he believes is going to be a total surrender of Ukraine to Putin, the rewarding of Putin for starting a war, for invading a sovereign territory, a sovereign neighbor, and committing untold number of war crimes. John Bolton, somebody I never thought I would say or put on a list like this of honorable men and women, but since he served in the Trump administration, he's come around. Not that he always did not know what Trump was all about, but he's been very outspoken about it recently. And to quote John Bolton, after he heard about this conversation with Putin, he said, quote, "Trump has surrendered to Putin before any negotiations have even begun," which is absolutely true. He surrendered for Ukraine. Of course, he didn't ask Zelensky about this. No, he's playing the big, great power game where he is going to surrender all the rights and benefits and the entire nation of Ukraine to Tsar Putin. I'm disgusted And you know what, folks? If I said exactly, truthfully, what I feel right now, I couldn't make this podcast. I'd be stuttering and shouting more than I am. And I don't want to do that. I'm upset as it is. I cannot tell you how my heart and soul goes out to the Ukrainian people right now. I feel so embarrassed to be an American. And any Ukrainians watching this, please, please, I'm sorry. I am sorry truly from the bottom of my heart what this animal, Trump, this man who is not my president, has done to your country, how he has betrayed you. Some of the bravest people in the world right now, Ukrainians. I will always support you to the end. And that's all for today. I'll be back soon with some more information about how this channel is going to continue to support Ukraine and how it's going to continue to be a voice of the opposition to MAGA, Trump, and this insanity, this assault on international law and norms. So you come back here every day, and I'm going to have more information about that as well. So in the meantime, you all take care, stay safe, and stay sane.